everyone, welcome to the Plutonium show, or welcome back if you're not new. So I'm alone today, as you can tell, because we're going to be, I suppose, reverting back to an older style of my videos. It's still in this podcast format, as you can see, because honestly it's a lot easier for me to edit this because there's minimal editing, if any. So, but what we're gonna do is, talk about, as you can tell from the title, the 2005 criminal trial of Michael Jackson. Now, this has been requested, and initially I thought it was going to be such a huge undertaking and I put it off, but recently I just felt so strongly about it, and I also realized that what really matters is pointing out the lies, because at the end of the day, he was found innocent on all counts, all 14 counts. So it's, my job as a lawyer is easy at this point. That's not to say every time a jury makes a finding it's correct, but in this case, it 100% is correct. So what we're gonna do is, I like to summarize because that's just how I like doing things. I don't have the time and patience to make very long and drawn out videos, especially when they're deep like this one. So we're gonna briefly look at the background, the facts of the case, because that's always how a case starts. You have to look at the facts and present them to the jury, or the audience in this case. And then we're gonna focus on all the little tidbits that clearly point to the Arvizos being liars. I don't know what else to say. All right, it's a bit weird talking alone, I'm not gonna lie, because I'm so used to the back and forth now, but I guess it's just what we're gonna have to do today. So to start off with, like I said, this all started, and in fact, it is a fact that the Martin Bashir documentary, Living with Michael Jackson, which was aired very early in February of 2003, directly led to the police investigation against Michael. And of course, the Arvizos were featured in that documentary because Gavin was, at the time initially, so let's backtrack a little bit. In June of 2000, Gavin Arvizo, the victim, the complainant, was 10 years old, and he contracted a rare type of cancer. And if you see me looking over here, of course, I'm looking at my notes. So he's also at the time, he was communicating with other celebrities. Comedian Jamie, I'm sorry if I butcher his last name, Masada, regularly visited him. And I believe Chris Tucker, was it? Let's try to find out. Yeah, Chris Tucker was also in communication with Gavin. So he was this, kid who attracted the attention of celebrities because of his illness. And what happened was, it's through these people that Michael even got to talk to Gavin, because I suppose Gavin expressed that he was a big fan, and then these celebrities, I believe it may have been Jamie Masada, because he testified in 2005 during a trial that he didn't personally know Michael, but he managed to contact his people and tell them about Gavin and his request, which is to be in contact with Michael Jackson. So again, very much like the Chandlers, we're going to draw a lot of parallels here. Michael never sought out this kid. He never looked for him. He never initiated contact. He was living his life and minding his own business, very much like Chandler, the Chandler case back in 92, I believe is when they met. And then someone organized some kind of a phone call between Michael and the child, because the child was a huge fan of Michael Jackson, and Michael, being the sweetheart that he was, would call. So this is also how this relationship started. And you'll find out through the facts that Michael kept his distance the entire time. So some of you might be thinking, well, why is Michael an idiot? Why did he do the same mistake all over again? Did he not learn from the ordeal in the 90s? He did. He went through extreme lengths to keep the Arvizos at bay from him physically. So he was hospitable enough to allow them to come to his ranch, Neverland Ranch. And they did very frequently. They slept over there. At times he wasn't even there. So he was generous with that, but with himself, availability and direct access to himself was not given, because Michael learned his lesson. In the sense that, I'm not saying he learned his lesson that, assuming he was guilty in 93. No, and in fact, I have a 2-part video, not series, but just 2 videos in which I discussed the 1993 case in quite some detail on the settlement. And in fact, a lot of people have told me that they used to think he was guilty, and when they watched those videos, they changed their minds. And Taj Jackson, Michael's nephew, came across the video. I don't know how. Someone must have pointed it out to him, and he was very happy with it and very impressed by it. So when I say Michael learned his lesson, what I mean is he didn't allow himself to be so accessible to these people because of what happened last time. So, again, I'm just skimming through my notes just to make sure I don't miss anything. Around August 2000, the Arvizos meet Michael in person for the first time. And mind you, I think this first phone call was 5 minutes long. It wasn't even a long, drawn-out conversation. So, on their first visit to the ranch, the children, Gavin and his brother Star, asked to sleep in Michael's bedroom. And this is actually the night that was referenced in the Martin Bashir documentary. Also, let me know in the comments if you've watched that documentary, because obviously it's kind of, I don't know if it's required watching per se, but I remember watching it. I wasn't even 10 years old when it came out, so I don't remember that, but I remember rewatching it in 2009 when I was a teenager and just thinking what a vile scumbag Martin Bashir was. So if you haven't seen it, then I wouldn't tell you not to. I mean, it's a piece of crap documentary, to be honest. But to inform yourself, I suppose, about this case, if you want to know where did this all start and why did this happen, then you can watch that. And also, I will link in the description box Michael's rebuttal. So Michael had behind the scenes, his own cameraman filming the whole process for the documentary. So even when Martin Bashir's cameras went off, Michael's cameras remained on, and they were filming the whole time. And that was his rebuttal. And if you watch that, which I really, again, urge you to do, the link that I'm going to share, it's really old and poor quality because it was filmed in 2003. Sorry, not 2, because that's when the interview was held. September 2002 was when all the filming was happening. So it's quite old and grainy, and if someone has, better footage, please let me know. But if you watch that, you'll realize the extent of Martin Bashir's depravity. So yeah, they asked to sleep in the bedroom, but what happened was Michael, if they were going to sleep on the bed, Michael said he would sleep on the floor. And this is actually something that both, Gavin and Michael made that fact clear during the documentary. But what's not mentioned in the documentary is that not only did Michael not sleep in the same bed, but he insisted that his personal assistant, Frank Cascio, I think I'm pronouncing that right, slept in the room as well to have a third, an independent witness. Now, it's important to note that there is no claim of any wrongdoing from the Arvizos with regards to this particular night. So this is where I'm going to start really summarizing, okay? But basically, Michael, like I said, always made sure he was distant. And there wasn't really a lot of contact between the family and Michael in the period between August 2000 and September 2002, which is, sorry, I just like went through puberty again. September 2002, which is when the documentary was being filmed, and they were involved in that. Yeah, so, and at the same time, while he was distant, he still helped them out. So apart from letting them come, you know, over to his house and, you know, have the time of their lives, I believe he gifted them with a laptop and a van of some sort, which they ended up returning a while later because it was broken down or something, and they wanted them fixed or whatever they were alleging, and they alleged that they never got them back. And then the mother goes, yeah, he never gave them back because I confronted him about how clingy he is and how he needs to stop spending so much time on the phone talking to Gavin. It was, you know, it was weird. I wasn't comfortable with it. So he took offense to that and, you know, basically refused to give us back these gifts, which is ridiculous. We'll get into that a little bit, I think. I remember having them further down along in my notes. Yeah, so it's right here. According to them, they never see the items again. I don't know if it's 100% true, but they claim they broke down the two devices, or sorry, one of them is a laptop, one of them is a car, and they never saw them again. Now, one thing you have to be aware of with the Arvizo family is they were no strangers to lawsuits. In 2001, they reached an out-of-court settlement with J.C. Penney, the store, the department store. And the whole case was about the guards following the family into the parking lot because Gavin was caught stealing 2 school uniforms and 2 school uniform pants. And then somehow the Arvizos managed to switch that around and allege that the security guards SA'd the mom. I mean, even reading it now, I'm like, what did I just read? So she alleges, Janet Arvizo alleges that she was touched inappropriately by the security guards and she was SA'd and just regularly assaulted as well. And so they took them to court. So this is the kind of family that, you know, they're iffy. And it's also worth mentioning that the evidence and testimony that surfaced during Michael's trial showed that the Arvizos lied under oath in their depositions in the J.C. Penney case. So, credibility already in question. Now, when Martin Bashir's documentary aired on February 3rd and 6th, so 3rd was in the UK, 6th was in the US, I told you about the rebuttal video. Now, the Arvizos were involved in that. They waxed lyrical about how amazing Michael is and how ridiculous Martin Bashir's portrayal of Michael was. Between the 7th to the 8th of February, they remained there on and off until the 12th of March. Now, these dates are important because this is the period of time during which they allege wrongdoing occurred. And of course, the dates change when they realize that, oh crap, it couldn't have been this day, so let's switch the date. So according to them, they were held captive at Michael's Neverland Ranch. Problem with that is evidence and testimony shows that during this alleged captivity, the Arvizos went shopping several times. They visited a lawyer. They spoke to Child Protective Services because of the Martin Bashir documentary. And they also appeared in court to with regards to a child support debate with Janet Arvizo's ex-husband, because in 2000 the parents divorced. So they spoke to all these people, you know, they went to court, lawyer, child protective services, and not once did they make any mention or any note of being held captive, of Michael Jackson doing this and this to their child, etc., etc. So, like I said, initially they claimed that the inappropriate, I'm gonna try to keep this as clean as possible. The inappropriate behavior started on the 7th of February, but then when evidence emerged that made it difficult to support this allegation, they changed the date to the 20th of February. I want to delve deeper into this inconsistency, but I think I want to go ahead with the general timeline before we start really ripping apart their credibility. On March 24th, 2003, Janet hires a civil attorney, William Dickerman. Now again, a civil attorney. This is a parallel with the Jordan Chandler case. In fact, if you guys remember, the name of the lawyer that the Chandlers eventually used, he was Larry Feldman. And this Dickerman character, when he realizes what kind of a case, you know, fell onto his lap, he actually contacts Larry, and you know, and his reasoning in the testimony was, well, because Larry has experience with Michael Jackson behaving inappropriately towards children. So he put the family in you know, he basically introduced them to the very same lawyer that the Chandlers used. But what I'm mentioning here is civil attorney. So the same argument I used in my Jordan Chandler case comes up here again. Why did you go to a civil attorney? Why was that your first port of call? Why not go to the authorities? You had so many chances while you were out shopping and talking to lawyers and going to courts and talking to Child Protective Services to make a complaint. And yet, your first port of call is to go to a civil attorney. That is the first red flag, and the first of many, of course. I'm sorry, I'm already getting kind of worked up over this because I just don't understand why people... I don't understand. I just don't understand why. I mean, I guess you will get hints of why from Gavin himself, actually. And it has something to do with, oh, well, Michael wasn't paying me enough attention. I got mad. You know, I think there is some iota of truth to that. When they retained their lawyer, there was a lot of communication between their attorney and Michael's attorney, Mark Garagos. And they talked a lot about some kind of property that the Arvizos had in storage that they wanted Michael to give them access to. And they also claimed that Michael's people harassed and followed them around after they left Neverland. So many allegations, but nowhere in these letters from their lawyer, from the Arvizo's lawyer, there was no mention of any claims of false imprisonment, being held captive against their will, inappropriate behavior towards their child, nothing. And by the time Larry Feldman is assigned the case, or by the time the family is referred to him as a lawyer, which happened in May 2003, Gavin still hadn't... So up until this point, Gavin never said anything about Michael doing anything to him. Mind you, I should have mentioned that earlier. Nothing. Not even from the boy himself. So at this point, Feldman and Dickerman enter into a fee-sharing agreement with each other. So basically, they're pretty much both working on the case. Now, in June of 2003, Larry Feldman, the Chandler's ex-lawyer and now current lawyer of the Arvizos, sends Gavin to a psychologist. who is named Dr. Stanley Katz, and he was actually the psychologist who evaluated Jordan Chandler. You can't make this stuff up, people. You just cannot make it up. They're not even parallels anymore. They are deliberate and direct connections. You know what I mean? It's insane. So again, this was before Gavin said anything. Now we're in June 2003. Gavin still never said anything. But according to their story, the Arvizo story, Gavin first made his allegations to Dr. Katz. And then Larry Feldman, the attorney, in his testimony during the trial, he said that he told Janet, the mother, of Dr. Katz's findings. Now, this contradicts 3 other versions that the Arvizos made with regards to how Janet found out. And we will talk about them when we look at their contradictions in more detail. So then in June 13th, 2003, Larry Feldman reports Gavin's allegations to the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Office. And between July and September of 2003, investigators have several interviews with the Arvizo family. And again, these interviews are riddled with contradictions. It's not even funny. On the 18th of November 2003, an arrest warrant was issued for Michael Jackson based on Gavin Arvizo's allegations. At the time, Michael was in Las Vegas, but when he heard about this, he returned to California voluntarily to turn himself in. He was then released on a $3 million bail. And at that same day, when he wasn't home, 70 sheriffs raided his home, Neverland Ranch, to carry out a search warrant. Between March and April 2004, a grand jury hears the prosecution side of the story without the defense being present and without the prosecution's witnesses being cross-examined. So they just took it at face value without testing the evidence and without hearing the other side. And they indicted Michael on the 21st of April 2004. Now, there were 14 counts altogether, and I will show you what they are on screen because they're basically a whole bunch of inappropriate behavior towards minors and administering alcohol to a minor. Now, let's see if I can switch over. So this is the official felony complaint, as you can see. They're all pretty much repetitions for each alleged incident, by the way. So they're all the same, violation of Penal Code Section 288A. And also housed within this section are the elements. Now, basically, again, I'm going to summarize the elements. They're just going to have to prove that Michael inappropriately touched a child under the age of 14 with the intent of arousing, appealing to, and gratifying the lust, passions, and sexual desires of Michael and the child. So they would have had to prove all of this beyond a reasonable doubt, by the way. But yeah, so all up until and then here you get the other charge, administering an intoxicating agent in violation of Penal Code Section 222. So that's the official complaint. Now, what I said about reasonable doubt, if you're new to my channel, beyond a reasonable doubt is the criminal standard of proof. It's much higher than the civil standard of proof, which is here in Australia and in the UK on the balance of probabilities. In the US, the preponderance of the evidence, I believe. But it's the same thing. In a civil case, the decision maker, the court or the jury, have to be at least 51% convinced that the allegations are true. Whereas beyond a reasonable doubt, now, you know, legal professionals are kind of hesitant to give it a number or percentage, but it's essentially, if you break down the term, you know, beyond a reasonable doubt. So basically, you must have no reasonable doubt in your mind that the defendant is guilty. And I've given examples before, but I'm aware not everyone watches all my videos. If the defense was, oh, you know, I couldn't possibly have done it because aliens blocked my car, and, you know, I couldn't even be anywhere near the victim because I was on this street and aliens were just, you know, stopping me from driving any further. I'm using a far-fetched example on purpose because I want to really show you what a reasonable doubt is and what it's not. You know, the jury can't possibly have any reasonable doubt that the defendant didn't do it based on their story, because you just can't have a reasonable doubt based on aliens stopping you from going somewhere. A reasonable doubt is if someone has an actual, you know, if there's CCTV footage of that person in a completely different state at the time of the crime, for example. Or there are independent third-party witnesses, you know, maybe a receptionist, a concierge, a waiter, a bartender who can attest to the fact that this person was sitting right here and I was serving them at that exact day and time. So that's a reasonable doubt. That would make a jury pause and think, man, I really don't know. I don't see how this could have happened. And in that case, they should not return with a guilty verdict, because a reasonable doubt has been planted in their minds. And that's what an excellent defense attorney would do. They would explain to the jury, if you have any doubt, any reasonable doubt that this couldn't have happened, then you must return with a not guilty verdict. Which, you know, in Michael's case, they did unanimously. And another video I will link in the description box. I wish I can play them for you right now, but I'm just worried about copyright claims. So just to keep it safe, is a video, an interview with 6 of the jurors. And they talk about, you know, what happened and why they found Michael to be innocent. So it's an interesting video if you want to watch it, because basically once a trial is over, the jury can talk to the public and be interviewed. And this was taken, you know, very shortly after the trial concluded. What I want to quickly show you now is an excerpt from the court transcripts of Dickerman's testimony with regards to why he hooked the Arvizos with Larry Feldman. So he's being cross-examined here by, I'm assuming, Tom Mesereau, Michael's excellent defense attorney. So he asks him, at some point, did you refer this matter to another attorney? Yes. Who? Larry Feldman. Why? He goes, there were a lot of allegations being made, and I realized that the best thing for my clients to do, and for me personally as their attorney, was to get some expert input as to matters of Michael Jackson. Let me switch back for a second. I find it very interesting that he decided to go with, you know, after all the allegations being made, this lawyer's thought process was, I'm going to refer them to another civil attorney, rather than, holy shit, maybe we should go to the police, because no allegations were made. At that point, the Arvizos never said anything about Michael. So obviously, as this, you know, civil attorney's actions clearly demonstrate, nothing existed until Larry Feldman was involved. And for anyone to say, oh, he's a lawyer, he's probably impartial, he's not gonna, you know, his involvement in the Chandler case wouldn't have colored his perceptions of this case. That is the most far-fetched bullshit I have heard, if anyone would say that. You know, because of course, Larry Feldman was instrumental in the way that this case played out. It is not a coincidence. And of course, the allegations only came up when he was involved and referred the child to the same psychiatrist, or was it psychologist, same mental health expert, and only then, just like Jordan Chandler, only then did the allegations ever surface. We're talking February till June here, people. So February 2003 till June, in all that time, the Arvizos never even thought of making such allegations against Michael. It was all financial. It was all property related. All right, now I want to get to the inconsistencies, because this is the most important part. This is where the Arvizos' credibility is ripped to shreds. They kind of make Amber Heard look credible. That's how bad these people are. So what makes it really important, what makes credibility really important, is in cases where the only evidence to support a victim's allegations is witness testimony and the victim's testimony themselves, of course. So when there's no DNA evidence, when there's no physical evidence, when there's no direct evidence like footage, you know, it all comes down to the credibility of the witnesses and the accuser, of course. So when you don't have that, an entire case will come crumbling down, which is exactly what ended up happening. Michael was found innocent. So between 2003 and 2005, the Arvizos relayed their story multiple times. First, it was to the psychologist, Dr. Stanley Katz, in June 2003, and then to the police multiple times in a series of interviews in 2003, and then in front of the grand jury in 2004, and then finally during the actual testimony itself in 2005 during the trial. The first detail that started to change, and I can tell you from personal experience with victims of SA, I don't even know why I'm censoring myself. I think at this point we're too far gone, but I'm just used to it. The number of times that these witnesses, when someone's being truthful is what I'm trying to say. When a victim is being truthful, it's very easy for, attorneys such as myself and the police and basically the authorities to determine whether they are being honest or not based on the consistency of their story. And this includes the number of times that they were attacked, for example. The time of, not the exact time, but was it nighttime? Was it daytime? Where it was. If these details keep changing, that is a red flag. Now, of course, if the victim was passed out and unconscious, they're not going to know how many times necessarily, but they would at least always say where they were, where they woke up, what they woke up to. Was it dark? Was it light? Did they recognize their surroundings? Where was the accused at that point? Like, there are certain details that you just never get wrong if you're being truthful. And, for example, in, the case with Zach, he was SA'd, as you guys know, if you're not new to my channel, and he never, ever, since we met in 2015, never changed the number of times, because he had 2 separate incidents in which he was assaulted, SA'd. The number never changed. The story never changed. No matter how off guard I catch him when I ask him questions, it's always the same thing. So in this case, they start off by saying that, okay, let's put it this way. In the prosecution's original statement of probable cause, which was issued on the 17th of November 2003, they say that Gavin describes at least 5 instances of inappropriate touching taking place between February 7th and March 10th. But then, on July 7th, 2003, suddenly Gavin tells a sergeant that they occurred less than 5 times. And then, on the 13th of August 2003, the same sergeant, Gavin tells him that they occurred a total of 5 times. And then, in the same interview, so here we're still on the 13th of August, Gavin says that it happened 7 times, on 7 separate occasions. Let that sink in. In the same interview, forget the other times if you want to make up excuses for them. Oh, he's a child, you know. There is a difference between 5 and 7 and less than 5, and there's a difference. And that's a red flag. And then, by the time it went to trial, mind you, the alleged incidents became 2. So we went down from 7 to 2. And after he described the second alleged act, he was specifically asked, were there any other occasions where Mr. Jackson tried to do something to you that you felt was inappropriate? And he says no. And fun fact, this changing number is also found in the prosecution's initial felony complaint, which had, they alleged 7 acts of indecent behavior towards children, but in the final indictment, they changed it to 4. So we have inconsistencies here, not just based on, not just within a witness's retelling of the story or the incidents. It's reflected in official court filings. That's how bad the situation was with regards to the credibility and the consistency of Gavin. And it's not just Gavin, mind you. His entire family. I don't even know. Did they even bother to rehearse their answers and to make sure that they're all on the same page? Because I tell you, they were, one of them was over in page 556 and the other one was in page 2, They had no idea what the other one was saying. And thank God for that. I'm not saying they should have rehearsed, but it just shows you there's just nothing. I don't know. I don't want to be mean, but it's kind of hard to be nice to people who are hell-bent on destroying a man's life, a man who has shown them nothing but love and generosity and kindness, a man who didn't owe them anything. Michael Jackson gave them his time. It's hard to think well of people who want to bring such a wonderful human being down. And not just down, but destroy him. For what? We'll talk about this more towards the end. There are other inconsistencies. So initially, with regards to, Gavin says, oh, Michael told me that men have to masturbate. But then, in an interview on the 13th of August, 2003, with a sergeant in the police force, he goes, oh, my grandmother told me this. But on the stand, he says Michael told him. So during the trial, 2 years later, he changed from my grandmother to Michael. So you can see how there are 2 different people that you can't get them mixed up. It's not like, oh, this officer told me this, and then you changed to a different police officer because, you're a kid and you're not memorizing police officers' names. It's an easy mistake to make. No, you've got Michael Jackson and someone's grandmother. And this is important. This point about masturbation is important because they say that this is how Michael introduced Gavin to the act of self-pleasure, and that's what led to, you know, the inappropriate touching. Now, his brother Star, this is an interesting one because this one involves actual evidence that, again, I actually found it on YouTube and I will link it in the description box. Michael had an alarm system. It's connected to the main entrance to his bedroom. So the doors, because his bedroom was, you know, it was, I think it was 2 levels. So if Michael's upstairs in his actual bedroom, you know, where the bed is, and someone walks into his bedroom from downstairs, he will hear it. That's the point of the alarm. It's for him to know that someone's walked in because, you know, he lives in a very busy place. I mean, he's got lots of staff and he needs to know. So this is what destroys Star's credibility because he goes, I walked in on them and I saw Michael do this and this, and Gavin was passed out because he was drunk, and, you know, Michael gave him alcohol and yada, yada, yada. But, and this is only one of the issues. Of course, Star also had inconsistencies with what he saw and what he didn't see. He kept changing his story, and this is where things get really graphic, and I don't want to get graphic. It's not even for monetization purposes. It's just, I don't want to upset people. It's graphic, and everything will be linked. So if anyone wants to actually read the details, then, you know, you can do so in your own time. But Star keeps changing his story. You know, first he goes, oh, Michael was doing this, and then he completely leaves it out and goes, no, I didn't say that. And then he goes, oh yeah, there was alcohol. And then he later goes, no, there wasn't. You know, it's major inconsistencies. There's this one time when not only did he not rely on an allegation, this is Star, by the way, not only did he drop an allegation and not bring it up again, when it was brought up by Tom Mesereau during cross-examination, he would flat out deny having ever said it. So it's not like, oh yeah, I forgot, yeah, I did say that, I want to include that as an allegation, thanks for reminding me. No, he goes, I never said that. I never said that to Dr. Katz. Just flat out denials of, and what Tom Mesereau was doing. So in law, in a trial, when you're an attorney and you're questioning a witness and the witness doesn't remember, you can refresh their memory by handing them the evidence, for example, a document. So here, Tom Mesereau was trying to, was like, I'm going to hand you over this document just to refresh your memory. Your Honor, the witness clearly doesn't remember, so I'm going to hand him something to help him. And Starr kept saying, no, I know what I said. I know what I said. He was very defiant about that. So back to the alarm system, because I kind of went off on a little bit of a tangent with, his other inconsistencies. So Starr says he walked in and witnessed Michael, right? But what Michael's team then did was conduct a test of this alarm system multiple times. And this is when one of these times is within this video that I'm linking. And the purpose of this test was to see whether the alarm system can be very clearly heard from upstairs, where Michael was allegedly with Gavin. And it was. It was clear and loud as day. There is no way in hell that Michael wouldn't have heard the alarm announcing the fact that Starr opened the door. And not only that, they tested the sound of the footsteps up the stairs, because there's a staircase leading up to the bedroom, and even the footsteps in the staircase would have been enough. Let's pretend there's no alarm. Those footsteps would have alerted Michael to stop doing what he was doing. And it's important to point out that the prosecution actually alleged that this alarm was there to alert Michael in case he was doing something, inappropriate towards a child. But that was never proven. It was just, speculation put up by the prosecution with no evidence to back it up. Like I said earlier, it's not strange for someone of Michael Jackson's stature to have some kind of an announcement, at the doorway into his private domain, his bedroom, because he lived with God knows how many staff members, how many cleaners and assistants, and, people would go in and out. So the dude wanted some privacy in his bedroom. He wanted to know, what if he was, naked upstairs because he just came out of the shower? You know what I mean? What if he was just in his own space. Like the rest of us humans, we all get up to our own shit in our own space. It's not always criminal. In fact, I would say that 99% of the time with us normal human beings, or I shouldn't say normal because I know people are going to attack me and say, well, Michael wasn't normal. Most people, from my experience, because, at this point I've lived on this planet for 25 years, and that people are just hanging out. Maybe they're watching porn. Maybe they're watching a movie. Maybe they're on the phone. Maybe they're just lying down in bed. Maybe, there are so many things that we could be doing that we wouldn't want people to walk in on, but at the same time, they're not illegal. It doesn't have to be either you're not doing anything and you don't need an alarm system, or, if you have an alarm system, then you're up to no good. It's ridiculous. One more thing I want to say about the alarm system is, I know some people might say, oh, well, maybe Michael just didn't care. He knew his staff wouldn't ever report him, or, he knew his staff were under his thumb and they were loyal, or he knew that Star wouldn't do anything. That's preposterous, No one has ever witnessed Michael do anything in terms of his staff. And don't even get me started on Leaving Neverland. And that, I don't know if it was more than one staff member who was interviewed for that. I know there was one particular maid that had a grudge against Michael. But other than that, we have to remember this man was found innocent because there was no evidence, no eyewitness testimony that was credible to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Michael did this. And another thing about Star, initially he said, oh, I was actually assaulted too. But then he withdrew that allegation. And it was never brought up ever again by any of the family members. Another important point that is a parallel actually with the Jordan Chandler case. Gavin was asked to describe Michael's penis. Now you all know, or you might not know, but I'll tell you, that Jordan did not correctly describe Michael's penis. And it was photographed in 1993. And of course that was major proof that he'd never seen it, even though he alleged that he did. Same thing happened here. Gavin literally goes, I didn't know about patches. I thought he was just all white. Now this is important because Michael had vitiligo. And all the evidence, including the photographs taken by the police in 93, demonstrated that he had patches. His genitals weren't spared of the disorder. I don't know. I'm not a medical person. The condition. There were patches there too. So a lot of these allegations that I'm not telling you in detail because it's very graphic involve Michael's genitals being out there. The children allegedly, they alleged that they saw it at the time. If you saw his genitals multiple times, then you would have known how to describe it. There are other inconsistencies, and I really could go on, but they're all just so bizarre, Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like I'm almost hitting the hour mark here. Obviously, if I edit some of my silences, it won't be as long, but you could really go on and you can just read about it more yourselves. And I'm picking the most heinous ones. There's for example one of, Michael showed us porn. No, it was proven that they actually looked it up themselves when Michael wasn't even in the room. And there was one really bizarre allegation that Michael was simulating sex with a female mannequin, which by the way was a replica of one of Michael's female cousins. And this one always changed as well, Initially, the Arvizos were like, well, Star was like, oh, I don't remember if he was naked or not. And then later, he suddenly remembered that he was dressed. And it's just stupid little lies here and there that they just couldn't keep their lies straight. They couldn't keep their story straight. A major component that I want to talk about is the motive, because apart from money, was there another motive? That's an important question. And the reason why I want to talk about the motive is it's so important to point out, as I said earlier, that Michael was very distant from this family. It wasn't a Jordan Chandler situation where he was basically welcomed as a new member of the family almost, and, you know, spent a lot of time with them. It wasn't anything like that. He, at some point, Gavin, you know, when he's testifying, he's like, let's try to find it so I can actually show you on screen. All right, so here he's being cross-examined. And approximately when do you think he wasn't talking to you anymore? Gavin says 2 months into my cancer. And that would be around August or September of 2000. So, okay, so August or September of 2000, you and your family started sending nice letters and cards to Michael Jackson, correct? Yes. And it was your understanding your mother used to send him cards and letters as well, right? I think so. So it says here also, to continue. And on those occasions when Mr. Jackson was on the ranch, did you have any contact with him? Those 2 occasions, yeah. But I mean, like, sometimes I'd go up to the ranch and he would say he's not there, and then he would be there. That's how far Michael went to, on the one hand, make sure they're welcome and extend his generosity and have them be able to come to Neverland. But on the other hand, he didn't want anything to do with them. Rightfully so. I mean, look what ended up happening. So he went to the extent of lying and saying that, you know, tell them I'm not here. And then at one point, Gavin says he got really hurt, really heartbroken, that he realized he saw Michael and he was like, oh, wow, he lied to me. So there is this, I do wonder whether a lot of the motive, or not a lot, sorry, excuse me, a portion of their motive was also this, you know, fixation on Michael that wasn't reciprocated, and that really got to them. Because Gavin says in his testimony, I'm used to celebrities giving me attention. I'm trying to find it now. So right here, he goes, you know, it really hurt me. I'm just, where is it? When my 11-year-old mind, you know, when I see my friend, who's Michael, say that he's not there and he's not at Neverland, and then I see him walking and I see his car, you know, it felt like my heart broke right there. And I don't remember George Lopez or Jamie Masada or Louise Palanker ever doing that to me. So he names a bunch of celebrities and says that, oh, well, they never acted that way towards me. And then also towards the end here, okay, so this is Tom Mesereau. You complained to the Santa Barbara sheriffs that after I was done with my cancer stuff, you never saw Michael again, right? And then he goes, no, not until the Martin Bashir thing, which coincides with what we said earlier. They didn't see him between August 2000 and September 2002. And then, okay, you wanted to see him after you were in remission, correct? Yes. And then you felt in some way that Michael had cut off the friendship, right? Yes. You felt he had abandoned you, right? Yes. And you felt he had abandoned your family, right? Yes. You see what I'm getting at here? There's a strong note of, how dare you abandon me like that? You know, you're my friend. I thought you were my friend. And I feel that that was used to fuel Gavin and to convince him to turn and to lie. Because I don't know, I mean, he was 10, no, actually he was 13, or, yeah, 13 when it all started. And, you know, 13-year-olds, I mean, I remember being 13, honestly. It wasn't that long ago. And they're not little children. They're not someone you can just sit down and have them mimic, you know, like, just say this, okay? You can't really coach a 13-year-old, at least not your average 13-year-old. I don't know, maybe Gavin was a little bit vulnerable because of all of his cancer and chemotherapy, but it's worth mentioning, by the way, I believe he's still alive, so he beat cancer. But point being, he wasn't a 5-year-old. And it's the same thing with Jordan Chandler. That was my issue. It's like, these weren't children that could just be coached. So there was, Jordan never, you know, he never wanted to even take it to trial. He never cooperated with the police, with the authorities. He didn't even want to be involved in this one. He's like, keep me out of this. So with Gavin, the reason I'm saying this is there must have been some motive for him to willfully turn against Michael like that. And my theory is this sense of abandonment, which you can see right here in the transcript I just showed you. He was heartbroken. And what do people who are heartbroken do? Not everyone, but you know, scorned lovers, rejected lovers, people who, you know, put someone on a pedestal, right? You know, the higher your pedestal, the harder to fall. The harder the fall. I don't even know, but you know what I'm trying to say. The higher you regard someone, the more it hurts. The more it really gets to you when they don't pay you attention or they do something to disappoint you. And I think that Gavin was sorely disappointed and heartbroken and hurt by the fact that Michael was, you know, lying about not being home when he was, because he was going through, he was doing all he could do to maintain that safe distance. And that still wasn't enough. And I do wonder whether, ironically, that's what kind of also contributed to Gavin's wrath and ended up in this entire trial. The last thing I want to talk about before we start getting into kind of closing submissions is Janet's inconsistencies, okay? So initially she claimed that in her first interview with Sergeant Steve Robel on July 6th to July 7th, 2003, she told him that she first heard about the allegations in February or March 2003. On the stand in 2005, she says that she wasn't aware of anything with regards to inappropriate behavior. But in the prosecution's statement of probable cause in November 17th, 2003, she says that early in February, March, they told her. So on the stand 2 years later, she goes, no, that I didn't know anything. And then in the same document, the statement of probable cause, she says that she learned that she was informed about it in September 2003. Now, she claims that the reason she didn't say anything, even, you know, when she hired the lawyer, Dickerman, and never said anything to him and nothing ever came up. She goes, oh, I didn't want Michael's lawyer, Garagos, to know that we were going to the police. But they never went to a police, They never went to the police. They just were referred to Larry Feldman. So I think those are all the points that I kind of extrapolated from this web of lies, because I tell you, this is very complicated. And I do apologize if it's not as in-depth as you wanted it to be, but my thing on my channel is, especially when I do legal analysis, I do, you know, focus on the highlights or the points that are worth really talking about. Everything's worth it. Everything's, you know, everything is of value, of course, but, you know, I kind of focus on the material facts, the material inconsistencies. And when I think about this case, especially now, you know, with all the research and trying to condense all the points, and all I can think is why? Why? I don't know. I struggle to even accept that we're all human sometimes, because some of us don't behave with an ounce of humanity. Why? Why do you want to destroy? And they have destroyed him. This is what really gets me worked up when it comes to Michael Jackson. You know, if he was still alive and happy and thriving, it wouldn't be as unbearable. You know, to me, it's, these people snuffed him out. They extinguished his life. Martin Bashir, I mean, let's face it, Michael's decline started in the early 90s. Let's not, you know, remove any culpability from the Chandlers. But Martin Bashir was, you know, the final nail in the coffin. And they made him a shell of a human being. And I can't even imagine what it must have been like. You know, we all think, oh, it's Michael Jackson. He had all the money in the world and all the fame and all the fans and all the accolades. But all of that disappears when you're put in the situations that he was put in. You know, there are interviews I've watched of him talking about how the Santa Barbara police treated him when he turned himself in, mind you. He turned himself in. He flew back to California to turn himself in. They apparently, you know, really roughed him up. And there are interviews of him saying this directly. And, you know, you can watch them for yourselves. But they really mistreated him before he made bail. Sorry, my nose is doing that weird itchy thing again. It's like on the skin. It's weird. And yeah, with regards to, by the way, with regards to Leaving Neverland, I have not watched that documentary. I refuse to. I can't watch it. I will not watch it. I have seen the trailers, of course. I've seen snippets of that. That's why I mentioned that disgruntled ex-employee. I've seen her. And I will not watch something that is made to tarnish, to further tarnish the name of a man who has not only been dead for over a decade, but who has been found innocent. And for those of you who say, oh, it was a miscarriage of justice, show us the evidence. Apart from this dodgy, completely lacking in credibility testimony of this family, show us the evidence and maybe we'll change our minds. And a documentary, a one-sided documentary, is not evidence. And correct me if I'm wrong, didn't these two accusers, Wade Robson and James Safechuck, didn't they testify for Michael during this trial? I mean, I think so. Wade Robson, let's see, James Safechuck, testimony 2005. Am I imagining things? No, they did testify. Yeah, they testified in his defense. So, I mean, you can start there, you know. Explain that away. Explain that inconsistency. And why wait till he's dead? Why not bring, you know, why not file all of the claims that they filed against him when he was still alive? It's just, people, and I wish Zach was here because he says this a lot to me when we talk about Michael. People don't like others who don't fit the norm. You know, they don't fit the mold of what is normal in society. And yeah, Michael wasn't the norm. You know, he looked different, he spoke different, he acted different, but that doesn't mean that he's a bad person. To me, from what I've seen, and I've said this I think before in a different video, but he was just that innocent in his mind, that naive. You know, like in the Martin Bashir, I don't know if this was his rebuttal footage or the actual documentary, But Bashir goes, you don't see, what's wrong with sharing a bed with a child? And Michael goes, he goes, no, it's it's kind of like the nicest thing you can do. You share your bed. And he specified, though, but I sleep on the floor. I gave them my bed. So he was saying, like, it shows you how much I honor children and how highly I value them. I give them my bed. It's the highest form of hospitality. Have my bed. I'll sleep on the floor. That's the kind of person Michael was. And I feel like some humans are so depraved in their own minds that they can't fathom that an adult can be that innocent. No one's saying Michael was a normal adult. Some people, some psychologists said he was, he was kind of like a 10-year-old in his mind. A very clever 10-year-old, because he was also very savvy. But that innocent, clinging to his childhood aspect permeated through every part, of his life. From how he spoke, how he behaved, how he, Neverland Ranch. And he was just all about innocence and childhood. And people just refuse to accept that. And when I say people, it's not everyone, but I think when it comes to Michael Jackson, a lot of people think he's guilty rather than the other way around. But I say this, and this is in closing because I'm really going overboard here. Follow the evidence. Don't listen to what other people say. Don't listen to what some documentary says. If you really care enough, if you want to be confident enough to say he's guilty, do the research and convince yourself before you convince others that he's guilty. I did the research and it's crystal clear to me. I think that's it for this episode, for this podcast. Zach will be back in the next one. I really feel strange just blabbering nonstop in this one. But yeah, we'll go back to the normal banter that, is elicited naturally between two people. So I hope you all found this one informative. If you have changed your minds, do let me know, because it always makes me quite happy to know that. If you still think he's guilty, without being rude and insulting, maybe let us know why in the comments. Maybe you have your own evidence. Maybe you can enlighten us. But yeah, I just wish people would, also, people have asked me to do this, to make this video, because, I was going to say I wish people would leave him alone. And I've already had people on Twitter before, when I used to use Twitter, tell me, oh, just leave him alone. Why are you making a video about him? Let him rest. It's like, I'm trying to clear his good name, because there are still people to this very day attacking it. So I'm doing what I can to help to clear his name. I'm not trying to stop him from resting in peace. Quite the opposite. I would ask people who relentlessly attack him to let him rest in peace. The sad irony is, apart from Evan Chandler, who took his own life, pretty much everyone involved in these cases is alive. All the accusers, and then Michael. Michael is the one who's gone. And there is a direct correlation between how he was treated by these accusers, by the authorities, by the system, and his eventual demise. All right, with that, I will love you and leave you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Next episode, I'm going to respond to a lot of the comments I got on the Lilibet situation, because I had no idea the motives behind naming the child Lilibet. I thought it was just, oh, let's get in the Queen's good books again. But no, you guys in the UK, you've schooled me, and I really want to kind of bring up these comments and talk about them, because I'm in shock at how low Meghan can sink, and Harry, I guess. So that's, amongst other things, that's what we're going to probably talk about the next episode. I hope you guys have had a great weekend and a great start to the week. Take care. Until next time, I'll see you later.